Hello everyone, my name is Amanda and this is Fiona. Welcome back to another video of the Planty Mandy. Alright, so today Fiona and I are going to talk to you about one of the hottest plants in the houseplant market right now, which is the Monstera deliciosa albo variegata. So today we're going to discuss many things about this particular plant. We're going to talk about the care tips. We're going to talk about some like basic knowledge of the plants, like growth structure and stuff like that. And more importantly, I do want to discuss with you guys where to find this plant, what are the options when you're trying to acquire this plant. And last but not least is something that you may want to pay attention before you make the investment. So let's get started. So the scientific name of this plant is Monstera deliciosa albo variegata. So essentially, it's a variation of the regular green Monstera deliciosa we see a lot in the market. And there's some confusions between this plant and also the Monstera deliciosa albo boscigiana. So there are two different plants. So essentially, the albo variegata, like this one right here, the one that we are going to be talking about today, it's a variation of the Monstera deliciosa because there's a mutation in the plant itself, and that's result in this really beautiful white variegation on the leaf, and that's why the plant is so desirable to a lot of people. And on the other hand, the boscigiana is a cultivated variety of the Monstera deliciosa. So based on my research and my knowledge, I understand that boscigiana have a smaller leaf size and also it's grow a lot quicker. So those will be some differences between the albo variegata and the albo boscigiana. And this plant originally comes from Mexico, I believe. Because of the variegation, it's become really highly sought after in the houseplant market. And there's many places you can find this plant. I would recommend to check out some nurseries first, like more reputable nurseries or growers. So I understand that Steve Leaves, for example, which is a really reputable growers in Texas, do carry albo variegata. And because the plants were so highly sought after, the demand is like ridiculously high. It's actually crashed their websites multiple times when they're trying to just sell this plant. So they decided, you know what, we don't want to deal with that anymore. So they decided they want to move the plants to an auction format. So yes, you can still find this plant on Steve Leaf's website, but it's going to be an auction format. The other bigger website or nurseries that I see this plant at is Logee.com. So it's feel like they have permanently out of stock for this plant, but I do know someone that, one of my friends that she bought an albo variegata a long time ago, like years ago, before this plant becomes one of the most highly sought after plants in the market. So she was able to get this plant at like less than $200, and it was a really good size plant as well. So yeah, so they do technically carry them, but do they have them? Maybe not. But I still encourage you guys to like put your names on the waiting list, because you never know, right? And last but not least is I do know people actually find this plant in their local nurseries, and there's always this like huge long waiting list that they may have to go on. But since you're able to see the plant, feel the plants, talk to the owner, make sure the plant is healthy. I also recommend you to do so if you do find one of this plant in your local nursery. So yeah, so that would be like the couple places just on top of my head that would have the plants available, and those will be my preferred sources of this particular plant. And other than those, you can find this plant from independent sellers. So that would be on Facebook or Etsy or eBay, and the price would be a little bit higher on those. And you may also have to consider there may be more risk to get the plants from the independent sellers. So yeah, so that will be a couple of sources that you can find the plants. So now that we know where we can find the plants, let's talk about prices. So which is something that we all want to know, right? Realistically. Before we go into prices, we have to talk about what are the options you have when you're trying to acquire a Monstera deliciosa, albo, variegata. And there's 4 different options, technically 3, but I'll explain why. So the first option, obviously, is the preferred options, is to get a whole, healthy rooted plants, preferably bigger, because the bigger the plant is, the more established it, and then the more resilient it is, against shipments and stuff like that. So that would be the top options, if you can afford it, or if you can find one even. So the price tag for that options will be a little bit higher. I would say if you're looking at a wooded plants, couple $100, it's pretty much the price in the market right now. And I do see some bigger one that can go up to like $1,000. So yeah, so it does come with a pretty high price tag if you are looking for like a fully rooted plant. And of course, the benefits of that is like it's fully rooted, so you don't have to worry about rooting the plants, right? Because if you have to root the plant, you do run into an risk of the plants are not rooting and just rots away. So yeah, so that would be the first option. And the second option would be cuttings. So cuttings mean that it's just like any other plant's cuttings. It's unrooted, cuttings with maybe a leaf or 2 leaves or something like that. And definitely you want the cuttings to come with a node. Otherwise it's just not gonna root, right? So that will be option number 2. And for cuttings, depending on the size of the cuttings, again, you may be looking at couple $100 or like $100 to $200. So it really depends on the quality of the cuttings and the size of the cuttings as well, and also how many nodes there are. And last but not least is the node. So the node is something that looks like this. So basically it's like a stick. So some people call it wet stick, okay, but I would just call it a node because wet stick doesn't sound good. So a node, so meaning that you're not getting any leaves, you're only getting a chunk of the stem, and the chunk of the stem would have a node on it because, that's where the new growth gonna come from, the root's gonna form, right? So you can also get that. And if you decide to buy a node, it's gonna be even cheaper. So the cheapest one I saw it's maybe about like $30 to $45, and there's also some more expensive one, like better quality one, or like have multiple nodes. So that's gonna be about like $70 or so. So yeah, so you can also choose that, and obviously, because of the price is lower, you run into more risk. Meaning that since there's no leaves and there's nothing, it's just basically a node. So you'll have to assume the risk of like, you'll be able to root them. So if you cannot root them, yeah, again, the node will just rot and die. And yep, so that is the other thing that you have to think about. And last but not least, well, this is really the last. It's really not an option, but I just want to throw it out there because I do see that people are selling Monstera deliciosa albo variegata seed, and oh, good girl, and it's not a thing. I'm just gonna tell you right now, it's not a thing because the variegation of the albo variegata is a mutation, so it's happened naturally in the plants. So that's why there's no such thing as Monstera albo variegata seed. And if you see that, do not buy that. Like, even though it's just like a couple dollars, do not give into it because it's just not real. There's no such thing as albo variegata seed. So yeah, so that will be the couple options that you have. And how do you choose that? It really depends on many factors, like obviously like how much money or how much resources you want to invest in. And number 2 is how comfortable you are with rooting a plants. And like I said, you know, the rooted version obviously is the best version because you don't have to worry about rooting them. But if you decide that you want to save a little bit of money and go for cuttings or even a node, you have to make sure that you're really comfortable with rooting a plant. And this is especially important when it applies to the albo variegata because albo variegata, in comparison to regular Monstera deliciosa, grow a lot slower. So meaning that the rooting process will take a lot longer. And this is not my saying. I actually take it from Leslie Halleck, which is a really popular horticulturist. I forgot her Instagram, but I heard her on Bloom and Grow Radio. I'm sure a lot of you guys heard of this radio station, the podcast station by Maria. I'm just going to put all the information in the radio notes. But yeah, so when she was on the interview, she said something that just like, oh my God, that is so true. So she said that essentially when you're rooting a plant, doesn't matter if it is this particular one or any other plant, it's a game of root or rot. So meaning that if it doesn't root, it's going to rot, right? That's why when you're rooting a plant, your goal is to maximize growth or roots the plant as fast as possible before it's rot. I just feel like that makes a lot of sense. And you know, if you apply that concept into rooting an albo borsigiana, albo variegata, because the plants grow really slow laterally, it's meaning that it may take it longer for the plants to root. And the longer it takes the plants to root, meaning that there's a higher chance for the plants to rot. So that's why the albo variegata is one of the ones that everyone is saying that, you know, it's pretty challenging to root. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but you do have to know how to do that in order to successfully root an albo variegata. So keep that in mind, and that would be the recommendation or suggestion that I would give you before you decide which options you want to go for. And because you think about it, right? If you decided you want to save some money and then you want to go for the node or the cutting options and you're unable to root it because you don't know how to do that, and then you end up killing the cuttings or the nodes, and then you have to spend like another $100 or $70 or whatever to get a new node or new cutting. Like when you add up a couple of times of that, it's basically equals to a small plant or even like a medium plant. So keep that in mind as well. So yeah, so that would be how would I approach on which options to go for. So because I have to move my plants baby over, so I have to put my fur baby on the floor. I'm sorry, Fiona. Okay, perfect. So this is the whole plant. Yeah, that's why I can put it. Ouch! That's why I can put it at the beginning because you won't be able to see me. All right. So I'm just gonna So this is the whole plant that I have. This is my albo variegata. Yay. So just to give you an idea of how big the leaves is, the leaf is bigger than my head. So yeah, he's a big boy or big girl. A big girl. I think she's a girl. I don't know. So yeah. So where do I? Okay. Here. So where do I get this plant? I actually got this plant from Steve Leaves. So for an auction, and oh my God, I have to tell you, it was like the most intense thing I have ever do to get a plant. It was literally down to like the very last seconds, like seconds. I'm talking about second. Before I know that I actually won the plant. It was back in December. Yeah, December, beginning of December 2019. So Steve Leaves, we stock their plants every Friday in like mid or late morning, and then they also put up the plants for auction. So this is what happened. So I saw this plant and I was like, oh my God, it's so pretty. I want it. It's auction. So let me try my luck, see if I can get it. And of course, I do set a like an upper limit for myself because auction is dangerous. At a point, the ego just kind of take over. It's no longer about like how much the plans actually are worth or what your budget is. People just, you know, bid for it, right? But I always set an upper limit. So if you're gonna bid for plans, I highly recommend you to do so. But anyway, I set an upper limit, and then there's different albo variegata at the pond that I can pick from. So I picked this one on purpose with a little bit more balance between green and white. And I know a lot of people like a lot of white, but I kind of like a little bit more green, number one. And more importantly is you have to understand that the more white a plants have, like variegation of plants have, or like the albo variegata has, the harder the plants have to work to generate food or energy, because only the green part of the leaves actually produce food, through photosynthesis, with its chlorophyll. So if you have a lot of white on the plants, number one, the plants will go slower. And number two, you may get like some brown tips or burnt edges and stuff like that. So I decided I want to pick the one that have a more balanced variation of like the green and also the white. So as you can see, like I have some leaves that have like, more like a marble, I would say. And then, so yeah, I have like mostly like some of them have mostly green, and yeah, so I really actually enjoy this type of variegation a lot more than some people say half moon, which is like half green and half white. So yeah, I'm really happy with this plant, and because I picked one with more green, this plant actually grow pretty fast, I would say. Not, of course, not as fast as my regular Monstera deliciosa, which grow like weed. Like I swear to God, like that plant, like the regular one, it's gave me like literally, I count 10 new leaves over the winter. So yeah, that plants grow really fast. And of course, the albo variegata does not grow as fast as the other one, but it did give me at least 3 new leaves, I would say, since I got it. In December, again in winter. So I think this one is new, and I think this one is new, and then also this one is new. So yeah, that's what I meant by, when you choose the variegation, just keep that in mind, right? So I give these plants, I would say bright indirect light, maybe a little bit on the lower end of the bright indirect light, because it does sit eastern western exposure kind of lighting, but I also add a grow light. So grow light is about 2 feet away from the plants. I have other small plants here, so the grow light kind of sit here, so it's get like a light from an angle. I give it bright indirect light, or like, on the lower end of that, and it's pretty happy. Like that's why it's gave me like 3 new leaves over the winter, right? So that's that. And for watering, I water it similar to my other Monstera deliciosa, because it's a slower grower, so it's it's prone to root rot. So I don't overwater this plant. I normally wait till the soil is about 60 to 70% dry before I water it, and then it has been perfectly happy. I remember this one time that I overwater it, and then the soil was like super wet, and I start noticing a little bit of like yellowing on the edge of some of the leaves. I'm like, oh my God. So once I noticed that, you can do it for your plants too, like any plant that you think you may have overwatered it. I just give it a lot more light. The reason for that is like the plant need the light to produce food and energy, and for that during that process it's going to use the water. So more light you provide the plants, not to a point that it's going to burn it, but the more light you provide the plants, the more water it will lead to absorb in order to produce that food and have the process of photosynthesis. So that's why I was giving it a lot more light. I just basically put an additional grow light on it, and bam, plant safe. So the yellow start to like stop and kind of disappear. And so that's that. So that's the watering schedule. Make sure you don't overwater it. And then one thing that highly related to watering obviously is the potting medium. So because I give it a woody well draining medium, I would say like 1/3 bark, 1/3 perlite, and 1/3 catex mix. So that way it retains some moisture. So I don't have to water like every other day. But it's very well draining. So it's just to prevent the root rot, right? And I do fertilize during growing season, which is spring, summer. I don't know why I have to think about it. Spring, summer, and fall, because I'm on the in the northern hemisphere. But I would say like over the winter, because it was still actively growing, so I fertilize it anyway. So I fertilize it with like a 2-2 or 3-3, something organic or more gentle fertilizer, maybe once every 3 weeks or sometime even a month. And it has been popping out new growth, so I think it's happy about that. Knock on wood a million times, no pests whatsoever. And again, keep the plants healthy, keep the plants happy, and the plant itself will be resilient to pests. And if you want to, you can also use systemic pest control. So now, disclaimer, systemic pest control is toxic, it's chemical. So if you have children or if you have pets at home, you have to be really careful when you use it. And that's why this plant is like up high in the platform, so none of my dogs can actually get to it. And yeah, but systemic pest control is a really good way to prevent pests on the albo variegata or just any other plants. So what you do is I buy the granuled one, and then you can just sprinkle it on top of the soil. You kind of mix it in to the top 1 or 2 inches of the soil, and then you water it thoroughly. Do not use it alone. Make sure that you sprinkle the granule and then you water it. So that would be on the pest aspect. And like I said, knock on wood a million times, no pests whatsoever for me. So I should cut this guy back soon, because it's just kind of like spreading all over the place. But for pruning, right? You can cut it to propagate, but also you can control the variegation on the leaf by proper pruning. So what I mean by that is like, if you look at the plants, right, the mutation or the variegation of the leaf will kind of you can kind of predict it with the stem. So the white part of the stem gonna give you white leaves, and the green part gonna give you the green one. So if you see that your plant start to revert, like meaning that it's losing its variegation, you may want to chop off some of the green growth and try to promote growth on the stem, from the stem that have more whites in it. So that's basically how you do it. And if on the contrary, you find that there's like too much white, like the leaves are burning, there's not enough green to produce food for your plants, you can also do the same thing by cutting the white part, so it's promote grow on the green stem. So that way you can kind of like balance it out. And I was lucky so far because I do give it like enough light, so it seems like the variegation is pretty stable for this plant in particular. So remember, right, albo variegata, the variegation is it's not stable, meaning that it can revert anytime. And keep that in mind too when you actually decide to purchase a plant. Do you have the environment? Do you have the time and resources that you're willing to invest in to keep the variegation? Otherwise, you'll be spending hundreds of dollars, only have the plant to revert, and it's become a regular green, deliciosa. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still beautiful. I love, love, love my green deliciosa. But if you are the one that who like really, really want that variegation, also take that into consideration. Alright, so next I want to talk about propagation for this particular plant. It's very important because if you do decide to buy a node or cuttings, you need to know how to root them or how to propagate them. So there's 2 main methods that you can propagate these plants successfully. And the first one is the one that I normally would go for, which is like what you do for many other philodendrons or just a regular Monstera. So you can see that, you know, this is the node, right, for the plants, and then you have this aerial roots. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut below the aerial roots and the node, and then I can stick it into the medium choice. That could be moss or just water or perlite, or some people like cocoa husk. So whatever works for you. So for me, normally what works best is speculum moss. So long fiber speculum moss. So I do that. So bear in mind that you have to have a node in order for the plants to roots, right? So if you link that back to what I said earlier, like when you're purchasing a cutting or even like the wet stick, like the node. So if I am a buyer, and then if I'm looking to buy a node, so I want to make sure that the seller doesn't just sell me, like, I'm trying to make it this section here. So aerial root doesn't mean node, right? It's just an aerial root. So I need to make sure that when I get like a node cutting or wet stick, quote unquote wet stick, I need to make sure that the node is included. If the seller only sell me like this part right here, it's not gonna do anything, right? So it's pretty much a scam. So then you shouldn't buy it, right? So with that being said, right, I want to get a cutting or a node, right, with or wet stick, quote unquote, with like this whole thing intact, and from there I'll cut it off. After I cut it off, I'm gonna let it callus over for at least 24 hours. I know some people like to dip it into wax, and just, you know, put it into the rooting medium right away. I don't do that. I have nothing against it. I just don't do that. So I just let it callus over and then I put it in the medium. So that's the first method. The second method is called air layering. So for air layering, you can either use it just with like a saran wrap, a plastic wrap, right? Or there is actually tools you can get online, like a rooting balls for that, and it's look like this. So essentially, air layering is you get whatever tools you're gonna use, the ball or just like plastic wrap, and then you're gonna go back to the same spot right here that I pointed out earlier. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna either wrap that around with the plastic wrap or the whatever tools you get with the medium inside the wrap. So again, it can be speculum moss, it can be cocoa husk, whatever you use. And the reason I like to use plastic wrap is because you can essentially see, like when this root start to grow into actual roots, you can see that the roots is growing, and you can determine if it is ready yet. So what I meant by ready is, once you see that like inside that balls or inside that plastic wrap, you see that while the root is growing, it's actually strong enough. What you're gonna do is you're gonna cut. So there you have a new plant already rooted. So the benefits for that is, because you're not gonna cut the plants until the root is formed, meaning that the baby plant itself, so cute. The baby itself would have its own root system to absorb nutrients and other stuff. And then before that actually happened, it's still attached to the mother plant. So you don't have to worry about that the cutting's gonna die. So yeah, so those are the two main methods that you can propagate this plant. And they both works fine. I tried both before. But again, you know, you have to make sure that you're comfortable with rooting plants. Otherwise, if you're a first-time owner of the albo variegata, I highly recommend, if you know you can, in any means, get a rooted plant, even a small one. So yeah. All right, so thank you so much for watching, and that's all I have for you today. I hope this can offer you a little bit of insights of what it is about this like really hot plants, very highly sought after plants. And let me know if you have any thoughts in the comment. If you have this plant, like what are some growing tips you have? what are something that you would pay attention to. And if you have any question at all, feel free to leave in a comment too, so that way we can learn from each other, right? And as always, thank you so much for watching. I have so much fun making this. If you like this video, make sure you click like. If you want more future videos, make sure you click subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.